Hello and welcome. I'm Danielle Lynn. So glad that you are with us as we focus our attention each week to help you find the most powerful information in the world to improve the quality of your life. In this hour, we will discuss news about a very controversial category in the dietary supplement and functional foods arena, looking at the benefits of cannabis, hemp, and CBD. This natural, single substance is breaking all paradigms of belief for addressing some of the gravest health concerns of our time, from opioid addiction to a myriad of health disorders that seem to be spiraling out of control. The questions are deeper, the cost for care is higher, and the increasing anxiety to find answers is driving new conversations and opening possibilities backed by science and human care. If this is the first time you've heard my program, we house one of the largest lifestyle podcast libraries in the world of interviews that I've done over 3 decades with the brightest minds on the planet, committed to change and transformation for the good. We'll talk more about that later, but you'll find us at daniellelin.com. My name is spelled DANIELLELIN. As I scan the landscape, and I have so many conversations with so many different people, it's easier maybe in some ways for me to find answers with real substance. But the best thing that we do around here is, because I have so many years of experience, is identifying the best leaders who have really done the work in the field. You know, if you've been listening to my program for the decades, that one of my major focuses and commitment is talking about the ingredients behind the products and what is the science that backs it up, or what is the experience. And in some cases, you know, you can put them all together and it makes sense. And in some cases, you really need to decipher. And today, that's what we're going to do. George Pantiakas is with us. He is a powerful voice with a tremendous background in leadership, crossing multiple platforms of industry and business. What I do know about him is that he has a commitment to getting the facts straight when it comes to the quality of natural ingredients that benefit your life, and especially as it is concerning now this knowledge about the hemp and the CBD industry. So I can say that in the years, and I know because I've known his reputation, and we had a brief conversation about this, and his intention was so strong that I asked him to please join us. He is the president, CEO of BI Nutraceuticals, and I'm going to let him expand on his background and the background of the companies he's associated with. He understands from the ground up how to investigate and find the facts that you really need to understand if you've been thinking about using hemp or producing hemp products. And the importance of this as we move into what some say is the greatest gold rush, maybe in our time, but more important, might break the way we believe about how we get well. And that's what's astounding about this time together. So please don't miss any of this time. And if you have to, go to daniellelin.com. George, do you mind if I call you George?
No, please do, Danielle. And it's a pleasure and a privilege to be on your show. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm really glad that we had this time. You know, I've known you a number of years, and of course, we're both in that raw material industry, although you're really on the ground. Let's talk about the background of the company that you're associated with first.
Right. So BI Nutraceuticals has been in the raw material processing of products, initially in the dietary supplement market, for over 40 years. We harvest sticks, stems, nuts, roots, and berries worldwide, 50 countries. We're the only producer that has a chain of custody from the time the seed gets into the ground and to the time it's harvested. And a lot of this product is wildcrafted as well. So there's a cultivated product, very much like you'd find in corn, wheat, soya. And then there's product that's wildcrafted, that grows naturally, and that is harvested by very talented and sophisticated agricultural pickers who have generations of native experience and nascent knowledge in the wildcrafted product to go out and identify the correct root or nut or berry or stick or stem and harvest it so that it can rejuvenate itself. And that is an industry that we've been in for a long time, as I said, 40 years. The product comes into the United States in whole form, and then we put it into a large autoclave. It's a steam sterilizer. It's developed by us, called Protex. And what it does is it sterilizes and kills the deadly pathogens that are on the plant. And this is something that's very important when you talk about organic product. Organic product is filthy. It is loaded with E. coli. It is loaded with salmonella. So you have to be very careful about that level of product that you're purchasing. So we sterilize it. We kill all of these pathogens, and then we cool the product down very quickly, and we maintain all the volatile oils, we maintain all of the efficacy attributes of the plant itself, and then we mill it into a powder, and we sell it to dietary supplement companies, we sell it to food and beverage companies, to bar companies, to energy drink companies, to a whole gamut of health and wellness. And we identified the cannabis CBD hemp market about 3 years ago as a market that there are very few times, and it's only happened to me once before in a completely different market, that you can look at a market in its infancy, watch it grow 20, 30, 40% quarter over quarter and mature into a global market. And what's unique about this market is that it grew as a black market first and was very, significantly consumer driven. So BI's been in these type of markets for a long time. We've seen all of the good and the bad that comes out of harvesting of raw material. And the key thing is we're taking these products for health and wellness. And the health and wellness starts with the quality of the raw material that is manufactured into either the tablet, pill, capsule, stick pack, or whatever the delivery vehicle that you're using is to make yourself healthier, to enhance or solve a malady that you're trying to correct.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's really important. So as you give your background and offer it, they didn't just start in the cannabis industry. You have to understand there are so many people right now that are jumping on board. Your next door neighbor could go into the cannabis industry today. So we're talking about 40 years of track record in the ingredient dietary supplement industry. So the reason I asked George in particular to be on with us is because, of course, none of you would know that I fell, and I'm a dancer and I do Indian dancing, and happened to attend a different class, and I fell and I broke both of my wrists. The intriguing part about this whole journey is how many people said to me, "Are you using CBD? Oh, you need to use CBD. Oh, you're not sleeping well. Oh, you're on opioids. Well, here's a way to get off of them. Here's a way to address the pain." I can't tell you. So it sparked this reality, as you said, George, that I think the only other time we saw this, I helped launch soy in America, like the early days, in the formulative times when you couldn't call it soy milk and we had to change the laws. That was one of the times where you actually saw a bean change everything about how we believed protein was going to be delivered. And now we have this concept of plant-based diets. And you have oat milk and hemp milk and cashew milk and soy milk, and it's at every, coffee shop in the country. That was a time of almost a revolution where we saw it come in. And I think that hemp is the sister to that reality that's been around, and you and I were talking about this before we even went on the air, since the 1700s. I mean, in every country in the world, they grow these major crops, and yet America has been denied this for very specific reasons, of which we will continue talking about. And I'd like you to give that history when we return. But George, what is the most important reason why, not just for the gold rush, but why you decided to head in this direction as a company?
Well, first of all, we want to provide quality products into growing markets, and we want to provide products that heal people, that provide value, that have been around for centuries. And, aspirin was a derivative of white willow bark. Everybody knows that echinacea helps cold and flu. People know that guarana and yerba mate are energy producing. You've been taking teas, chamomile and green teas for all different type of applications. And, what we're seeing now, and in the cannabis market in particular, is that there is a massive degree of sophistication in companies that are providing these products to consumers, and the consumer has changed dramatically. So I break it down, and I like to remove complexity from everything that we do.
All right, well, let me do this. Let me keep it simple, because this is so important that I don't want you to miss anything, folks. So let me take a break, and then we're going to come back. And so put that dial higher up so you can actually take home the knowledge that we have when we return. Hi, I'm Danielle Lynn, and we continue talking about what I think is one of the most significant conversations we could possibly have when it comes to ingredients. We're talking about the cannabis industry. We're talking about hemp. We're talking about CBD. You may be one of those people that have gone out and purchased CBD, but do you understand the labeling? Do you understand where the ingredient might have come from? Do you understand the manufacturer behind it? These are times where you really need to self-educate, and we want to help you do that. So joining me is George Pontiakis, and I want to just say, George, that we kind of mentioned the history of what happened in this country and why it got so skillywonk, if you will, in the cannabis, where you look at Russia, you look at Canada, you look at Asia, where people have been growing this literally for hundreds and hundreds of years, right? And yet America has been denied this. Can you talk a little bit about the history before we continue down the road of like ascertaining the efficacy and the purity?
Sure. Well, it's a very fascinating journey, right? I mean, all these other countries have been using it, have been testing it, have been doing research on it, and the U.S. has been shut down since 1970 when Nixon signed the Controlled Dangerous Substance Act. And what ended up happening was it became, for political reasons, many of the lobby groups in Washington, didn't want to have competition. The alcohol guys didn't want to have competition. The drug manufacturers didn't want to have competition. And marijuana was viewed as either a hippie drug or an urban drug, and it was not particularly popular, with the voting public. And so it was easy to go ahead and demonize it. And it was demonized way before this, back in the 40s and the 30s with reefer madness and everything else. But it really became legally demonized back in the 70s. And then, really, the Clinton administration with the three strikes law. I mean, if you talk about, reducing the prison population, if you just would eliminate, the prison population with those that were in jail for marijuana use, I mean, probably go down 30%. Mm-hmm. So the country has gone out of its way to force consumers to go into a black market on this product. And it continues to be that way today.
So all of these years and all of the experience, I mean, this is the whole thing with Chinese herbs, and you go back into India. The Western mind needs this documentation of science, and I don't disagree with that. But experience of thousands of years has produced knowledge. And I know that's one of your big points, George, when we were talking about, yes, we have branded raw materials, which you know that I love, but there's also this experiential background that is equally as important. So when we're looking at cannabis and we're looking at hemp, you work directly with the people who will then private label, bring it out in beverages or bring it out in bars. Then the consumers who are listening right now or in the industry will hear this. Where's the starting point where we have to look at the importance of the backbone of these ingredients that are coming in and ascertaining that efficacy? And let's really go through that part.
Okay, so with any raw material, it all starts with the quality of the plant, how it's harvested, and how it's managed as a crop, right? Whether it's organic, whether it's non-GMO, whether it is gluten-free. I mean, all of these aspects of plant commercialization all delve into the hemp and the CBD and the marijuana market, right? So one of the things that is challenging is that because it's don't forget, this is the largest cash crop in the world. And it's on the black market in the U.S. and most of the world, right? So, it is a massive market. And as it commercializes into the white market, the legitimate consumer market within the U.S. in particular, and North America, including Canada in particular, there is a rush. There's the potential for adulteration. And what that means is that you can go ahead and cut a product with either a benign ingredient or an ingredient that may botanically be similar but not have the same attributes you're looking for, and produce the product much cheaper, but the consumer won't get the benefit. And that occurred and continues to occur aggressively in the dietary supplement market. And we see it occurring now in the CBD market. We see it occurring in the hemp market. We see it occurring actually in the flower market and in the edible markets within the marijuana industry.
Explain the difference. Part of the legalization of this and the passing of these bills and the Farm Act, most people, if I said to them, explain to me CBD, hemp oil, hemp seeds, cannabis, marijuana, flowers, differentiate this, because most people think that hemp is marijuana.
Well, they're all botanically coming from, the cannabis species. I mean, there's multiple species. Industrial hemp is found in the northern hemisphere. It's a variety of the cannabis sativa plant. It's been around for over 10,000 years in commercial form to use as fiber. No, don't forget, cannabis is how we got the word canvas in the U.S. That's how we made our ropes and sails. That's what raised the sails on the USS Constitution in the Revolutionary War, right? We had this plant that was, industrial and helped grow this business. And then you've got cannabis. The psychoactive component of cannabis is THC, and that comes in a couple phytochemical strains. And what ends up happening is that hemp in lower concentrations can be industrialized because it does not have that psychoactive component in it, whereas if you harvest it in a concentration that's higher, that's where you get the cannabis oil, cannabis oil, and also the THC oil, which is what is used both in the flower for pain relief and nausea relief and medical side, and also in the CBD side for inflammation, etc. So the legality of industrial hemp really varies widely by country. Some countries have no issues with it at all. A lot of them, including the U.S., regulates the levels of THC and only have it by permit with low THC content for industrial hemp. You take a look at a lot of the hemp that's grown today, it's used in food. Fiber sources. Canada is one of the largest producers of hemp in North America, and it's basically used for food and oil. China uses it in volume for clothing.
In the natural products industry in 1979, 80, and I was in a room with John Denver, and there was about 10 Chinese men, and we were discussing the future of hemp. And then, of course, John died, and hemp was never talked about for years. And then we started seeing hemp seeds, hemp oil, hemp oil, but it was coming in from Canada. And it started to proliferate. It started to come into the market just like flaxseed or soybeans. But we never got that right to grow. And it's been intriguing to me, like you said, you're not going to get high, folks, from eating hemp seeds that you get at the natural products, store. And the fear that people have around this, most of that is what we're trying to clear up across the airwaves by saying you need to understand what the difference is. If you put CBD oil, that is an effective, efficacious oil, on for pain, I can tell you now, because I have 2 still broken wrists that are still casted up, that it worked. It works. But I'm not going to sit here and drink it. So what's the biggest thing that we need to understand as a population right now that's really important? Just for a minute, and then we'll take our break.
Okay, so let's break it down into 3 buckets, right? You have hemp, which is a nutritious seed. It's got 5% carbohydrates. It's 49% fat. It has 64% of the FDA daily values of 100 gram serving of protein. It's rich in dietary fiber, B vitamins, and minerals. It's the same as chia seed. Think of it as chia, high omega-3s. Think of it as quinoa, etc. Then you go into CBD, and that has been driven by the pet market. The pet market legitimized CBD to the consumer in terms of pet inflammation, pet digestion, etc. And then, of course, the marijuana market for not only the psychotropic aspects of it, but on the medical side, it's recognized for healing or minimizing the effects of cancer, glaucoma treatment, and chemo treatment for cancer patients. And then the fourth one we can get into after the break, but I think it's really interesting how that marijuana market is migrating into the millennial market.
And in what way, when we return, you'll talk about how the millennials are affecting that. They seem to be affecting a lot of things in all different ways. By the way, if you're an employer, it affects it one way. If you're buying products, the nutraceutical markets, all the different ways of looking at lifestyle, the work ethic and the work a week hours people are willing to pay the price for. We're talking about the whole category of hemp, CBD, what you need to know. By the time you're done, at least you'll have a ground floor level of understanding. But we're going to continue throughout this year a lot talking about what do we need to do to participate, what about the laws. There's some laws we're going to talk about next, and the understanding of how you play a role in all of this as a consumer. I'm Danielle Lynn. If you've never been to our site before, go to daniellelynn.com. It's spelled DANIELLE. LIN, daniellelynn.com. We house, as I mentioned earlier, one of the largest libraries in the world on everything from personal development, wealth, wellness, leadership, all of the things that constitute an amazing life with the greatest voices and minds on the planet. So visit that, and we're so glad that you're here with us. This is a really important transformation on our planet. In 3 years from now, you're going to look back and go, gosh, I remember when they first started talking about this, and now it's that. So stay with us. Hi, Danielle Lynn here, and so glad that you're with us because I couldn't do this without you, and certainly the companies we've worked with over the 30 years of broadcasting. It's been an astonishing ride, and one of the great things about, I'm in my studio, which is in Salt Lake City, and I'm looking at a wall of recordings that I started in around 1983. And if you go back, I can actually reflect on the movement of consciousness, the movement of the first time a radio show was done on diabetes. And I even questioned, why are we talking about diabetes? Think about that. So we're at the beginning of a time in history right now where we're talking in much controversial consideration in corners about the movement of hemp, the movement of cannabis. If I were to change jobs right now, or careers or life, and I were to say, what would I do? I would be on the road fighting for the American farmer to have the rights to grow hemp without any question in this country. Because as an American, there was a time, whether it was George Washington requesting it during the war, for our farmers to have one of the most important crops that's grown, doesn't need heavy pesticides. But because of the politics and the things that happened along the way, we lost one of the most important crops. And fortunately, companies that like BI Nutraceuticals are bringing back the legitimacy and the intention that people need to understand behind these important crops, with hemp, with cannabis, understanding the medical aspects, the healing, the health, whether it's for pets or for human beings. George Pandiakis is with us. George, you were talking about these 4 buckets, and we were also talking about millennials. Continue with that conversation.
Yeah, so BI breaks the whole marijuana, CBD, hemp market into 4 buckets. There's the Snoop Dogg, Jimmy Buffett, elder user who's been using this product for 30, 40 years, and particularly the flower, and they're using it for a euphoric effect. And then the second user is the young person coming into this flower experimentation, coming into college age and trying it out for the first time to get a euphoric effect. The third bucket are the medical people, the people who are trying to mitigate the nausea from cancer treatment, from chemo treatment, and also to mimic the effects of the treatment of glaucoma. And then the fourth growing population within this market are millennial parents. And we see them physically moving to free states of recreational marijuana and microdosing their children with edibles to get them off of Adderall and Ritalin because of the opioid crisis, which is a very real problem. But the overwhelming pharmaceutical usage of psychotropic drugs in children, I think, is going to be the next great crisis.
Yeah, you mentioned this earlier, and I'm not going to get too political, but when you said that there were vested interests in not growing hemp in America, and whether it was which bean, which oil company, which cotton company, whatever it is, we're at a time in history now where there are so many things out of control that we can't get a handle on. The healthcare costs, I mean, I spent 2 days in the hospital. I don't even know what it's going to be, but my friend was telling me they went in and they didn't have health insurance. It was $18,000 a day, and he wasn't in there for anything like major. So maybe perhaps do you see this as a way that we will break through? I mean, how big do you think this is going to be as far as the impact of this one seed that is now with us?
Well, everything comes out of legislation in Washington, right? So obviously, if you're a cotton producer, and cotton has a big lobby in Washington, well, you don't want hemp to come in there to be a low-cost alternative to cotton. If you're looking at it from a medical perspective and a CBD perspective, and then you're a pharmacy, I mean, who bigger and better and more well-funded are the pharmacy lobbies? So everything is, all access to consumer product, it comes out of Washington, D.C. And, the only reason the dietary supplement market is a $36 billion market today is because back in, I believe it was the 70s, Senator Orrin Hatch and Tom Harkin passed the SHEA. Mm-hmm. And if the Dietary Supplement Health Education Act didn't occur, you wouldn't have access to any of these dietary supplement products for your own health and wellness. So it all comes out of legislation, and that's one of the challenges is that as this market grows, the hemp market, the CBD market, the marijuana market all have to focus and come together as an organization, as an entity, to drive awareness into your elected officials. Because I got to tell you, votes drive legislation, and legislation drives dollars and focus. And, the reason why marijuana is a Schedule 1 DEA drug is because the pharmacy companies have massively lobbying to keep it there. Mm.
So what do we do? How do we, I mean, when you say votes, like as a consumer now, right now, if I were to say, listen, folks, here you are, and I am talking to you, those of you listening, our action needs to be X. What's our action?
Well, it's not just the consumer. It's the manufacturers. If you take a look at the impact, marijuana is the largest cash crop in the world today. If you take a look at the impact of legal marijuana in the United States in terms of economic value, it is massive. Massive in Colorado, massive in Oregon, massive in all these free states. What these companies need to do, and all our companies need to do, is to lobby and to let our elected officials know, hey, we're supporting tens of thousands of voters in every one of these states. And if you don't support us, we will find other representatives that do. And that really drives awareness within the legislative process. And I think that would be the largest impact. When consumers call their elected representative and say, hey, I'm taking CBD oil and I want it available to me, they listen. And I think that's one of the most important things that consumers can do beyond research of making sure that the product that they're taking is correct, is to go at and leverage the strength you have as a voter to your elected representatives. I want access to this product. I don't want to be denied the ability to take care of myself. And I think that is an important message that we really haven't done a good job on as a collective industry.
So let me jump to the other side, which is fairly common in my state where I am in Utah. The conversation is, well, yes, but we have to protect the children. This is damaging to children's brains. We need to be concerned because this is a drug. Talk about that.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's easy to hide behind that soundbite, but you have, all these pharmacy companies making billions of dollars on Adderall and Ritalin, and I don't see anybody upset about that. You've got 21 million opiates were prescribed to a town of 33,000 people in West Virginia. I think just now starting to see indignation about that. And all of these industries all know about this. Vice presidents of Appalachia pharmacy sales are making their numbers on selling all of this product. Vice presidents of operations in Ritalin and Adderall and all of these children's psychotropic drugs that are being prescribed wholesalely and dumbing down our kids and making them catatonic. Everybody is aware of that. So, I mean, if it's for the children, good soundbite, but you have to be consistent on that. And I don't see any consistency anywhere.
Well, and you look at companies like Charlotte's Web. I mean, had that special not run, who knows if we'd be in the same place today as far as the usage of CBD and the impact it can positively have. And look, you've been in the industry. I've been in it 30 years. Those of us that have really been around this from the very beginning of where it really took off, past the Paul Braggs and the Ann Wigmores of the days and the Jack LaLanne, you realize we've had the same fight all the way along, which is the misunderstanding through marketing and mostly associations that have decided, again, I don't want to get political, I just want to say that the dietary supplement industry has done more good on this planet than almost any other industry in the world, not only because of what it's done for healthcare for human beings, but for also what it's launched as far as planetary consciousness, the evolution of awareness of green and being clean, and not because it's cool to do it or that I'm going to associate and say I'm organic, but because it actually ignited a movement worldwide that is now just barely coming into where big companies are saying, and pharma companies also. And this goes back to efficacy, and we'll cover it in the last segment.
Well, they're all preparing for it. They're in it. I mean, you saw, Coke and Pepsi, they took opposite ends of the spectrum, but everybody's getting ready for the legalization of this thing on a mass and global basis. And you made a very important point. A single company on a single product with a single child with a single trusted consultative resource on TV, broadcast this success, and it defined an industry. Mm-hmm. And that was one time that it occurred, and the advertising came out, and the company did a magnificent job of explaining it and doing the research on it and providing the science on it. But if that happens consistently, think about how powerful the adoption of this healing products would occur.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what we're doing here. I'm Danielle Lynn with George Pantiakas, and we're going to continue more talking about the benefits of hemp and CBD and the knowledge you need and the participation as a human being to make some decisions on your own once you have the knowledge. All right, we continue in this hour together talking about, I love this. You know, I got to tell you, breaking your wrist is not a fun thing, and being in pain is not fun, and I'm not a person that wants to take opioids. And I was in the hospital, and literally they gave me, I won't mention the drug, but it's a nasty drug, and I had an out-of-body experience, and literally it created anxiety and all kinds of weird things that happen in 24 hours. And so when I got off of that, then they put me on another one that was less, but still. And then finally I got down to one that seemed okay, better. But then I got scared and I started thinking, wow, I'm in pain. What if I'm still in pain when this prescription runs out? So I understand that if you're in pain right now, I'm not making any judgment. I know because I got sick from taking pain pills, from being in a circumstance where I just didn't know what else to do. So it's not easy. And this whole subject, it's too new and just beginning to evolve, and the quality is very important. George Pantiakas is joining us. He's the president and CEO of BI Nutraceuticals, backed by 40 years of experience in the dietary pet area, and now, of course, certainly strong in cannabis edibles. George, you said something, I was going to call it, you said, we need to talk about what happens when you buy bad product. And then how do we protect ourselves from it? What is going to protect that rather than the officials coming in and saying, see, we told you it was bad?
Well, I got to tell you, regulation at times is good, and regulation is there for a reason. And one of the things you have to be aware of is CBD is manufactured. It is extracted. What ends up happening is that you take the seed, you take the plant itself, you distill it very much like you would an alcohol process. And in that distillation process, you can use ethanol, methanol, you can use CO2 extraction, you can use water extraction, et cetera. But if you take a look at cost, do not make your CBD purchase based on a bunch of positive Yelp or positive, reviews or customer reviews. Make sure that the product you're taking is extracted naturally and organically, like a CO2 extraction process. Because if it's solvent extracted, you're putting butane, you're putting petroleum-based products into a product, and it contains poisonous levels of pesticides, organic metals, and other unnatural byproducts that are dangerous to ingest. So don't make a buy decision on something for your health based on purely price or a bunch of anonymous reviews on some website.
Well, what would we do? Would we go to a manufacturer and call them? I mean, how do we find out?
Well, I think look at the label first. Take a look at the label. If the label says it's certified organic hemp or certified out of Europe, which is a very high standard hemp, you'll find that a lot of these products have detail on them as to how they're manufactured. Mm-hmm. Do your research on these companies. How long have they been in business? Look them up. If a company's doing business in the United States, you can see how long they've been in business. If they've been in business for 10 or 15 years or 10 years, that is an indication that they're solid, that they're probably using good product. But if they've been in business for 6 months or they've, been in and out of business 10 or 15 times, be careful. You're ingesting this product. You're putting this product on your body to heal yourself, and you don't want to add unnatural and unsafe additives to this. You'll find that the cheapest products out there are generally the worst manufactured. If there's one benchmark to take, don't buy a product for your health that is the least expensive product out there because it probably does not have good stuff in it.
Right. You mentioned the pet industry. Obviously, the edibles are becoming big. It was confusing, and I've been around this for a long time. But there were so many people sending me things like one company sent me the caplets, and I know them, so I knew they were supremely good because they're very prominent in the industry. And then somebody else sent me chocolate that felt different. Right. And then somebody sent me oils, and it was really confusing for me because I was like, well, should I take should I eat them and put them on at the same time? I mean, for just basic knowledge.
Well, you have to look at the dosage. Look at the recommended doses. Even for pets, they're doing it on weight. And a lot of that detail in science is pretty accurate. It also depends on what you're trying to address. Don't forget there's no euphoric properties in CBD, strictly to address a malady or to improve a function, whether it's inflammation or acuity or whatever.
But you can take too much. Are you saying you could take too much?
I think that you have to know your body, and the same hygiene that you would use with a dietary supplement product, I would apply it to a CBD product. You're not going to take half a bottle of, ephedrine. That's how we got into trouble with ephedrine to begin with, years ago. You brought the pet thing to light. I want to reinforce that. We never would have thought that petroleum byproducts like melamine would have been in products that humans ingest. And if it wasn't for the fact that pets in the U.S. started dying because product coming in from offshore, they were spoofing or mimicking attributes that were positive with chemical products. So that when you went to test it, it would read okay, but only would read okay because you're looking for a certain marker. So you really have to be careful on the CBD products that you're taking. Do your research. Educate yourself on what you're ingesting or putting on your body, and make the best buy decision you can.
I love that. And I think it's so critical. Don't just go crazy and not do your homework, because then people blame the industry. It's not the industry. This is your own conscious awareness. By the way, Dr. Earl Mindell, who's been a friend of mine at least for 3 decades. He and I were around in the early days. He was the author that wrote the Vitamin Bible, but he does have a great book, and I'm going to call him and have him on. It's called Healing with Hemp CBD Oil, A Simple Guide to Using Powerful and Proven Health Benefits of CBD. It's an excellent book, and if you haven't found it or seen it, just look for it on the marketplace. As you said, George, I think it's critically essential now that we do our homework, and that's why we're committed. And this whole year, folks, you're going to hear people like George Pantiakos from BI Nutraceuticals, raw material suppliers, not selling you a product, not putting a label on it, but behind the scenes doing the science and the research and the investigation to make sure that when they partner with companies that do put their label on it, you've got something you can trust. So, George, I'm so happy that you would take the time. It was really important to me that you had just said yes. A lot of people don't say yes about coming on and talking about even these subjects.
Well, look, health is a very important subject to us, Danielle. We built a big business on it, and it is very important that we provide products that are healthy, efficacious, and provide, benefit across the consumer. And I have to say, once again, if you're taking a product to benefit yourself, do the research. Don't depend on even, doctors with, prescriptives are asking you what type of dietary supplements you're taking, because, they just awoke to the fact within the last 10 years that there could be potential side effects on that. So
Right.
Do your research, understand what you're taking, and stay healthy.
Well, I really appreciate it, and thank you again. And thanks for listening. And you can go to our website if you missed anything or you want to tell a friend, share it, like us, review us, do all that good stuff that we have to do in this reality at DanielleLin.com. Make sure you spell my last name Lin. And George, it has been a pleasure, and thanks to BI Nutraceuticals for actually taking the time to educate us. We'll see you in the next hour. I'm Danielle Lin.